Hi, we're going to be using a Prezi to learn about the Cold War. So I'm going to go through some of the key concepts of the Cold War, and then you can access the Prezi on your own anytime to fill out that note sheet that goes with it. So as you can see, the definition of the Cold War is just a series of different tensions and rivalries between two superpowers, which was the United States and the Soviet Union after World War II. One of the things you read about was the atomic bomb and the reasons why the US should or shouldn't use it. One of the things is when the US used it, Robert Oppenheimer, one of the creators of the atomic bomb, said that he knew the world would never be the same. Now that technology of these weapons is out there, and even though the Soviet Union was our ally at the end of World War II, they really weren't. It was just to defeat the common enemy of Hitler. Otherwise, we were still kind of competing with Russia at the end of World War II to make sure that one country wouldn't be too powerful after Germany had fallen. So the reason they call it a Cold War is the US and the Soviet Union never directly fight militarily and attack each other. That would have made it a hot war. So there are going to be some what we call proxy wars during this time, but that's kind of the gist of the Cold War. As you can see, here's a few pictures from this era. So a high point of Allied unity at the end of World War II was at the Yalta Conference. It was in February of 1945, where the leaders of the Big Three, meaning Winston Churchill from Great Britain, FDR, before he had passed away from the United States, and Joseph Stalin, the leader of the Soviet Union, met to discuss the end of the war and how to destroy Nazism and German militarism. They decided that Germany would be divided into zones of occupation. So, like food and raw materials would go to Soviet Union. Some German factories would get dismantled and then would get moved to the Soviet Union as well. The U.S. would also take over a zone, as would Great Britain. Something else they talked about was bringing Nazi war criminals to trial, which was called the Nuremberg trials. You maybe heard of that before. And then how to help Europe set up democracies again in self-governing countries after this devastating world war. And then they wanted to look at reparations as well. You may remember reparations from the end of World War I. So there's Winston Churchill. He always has a cigar in his mouth. You maybe remember that poster of Winston Churchill in my classroom. There's FDR, of course, photographed sitting in a chair. And then there's Joseph Stalin, who actually looks pretty happy right now in February 1945 at Yalta. Then let's fast forward. Another meeting between the Big Three. This is at Potsdam in July of 1945. Remember, FDR died in April, so now Harry Truman is our president. Now just look at this picture compared to the one before. You can see now Stalin is kind of sitting by his lonesome because things have changed. That unity that was at Yalta is not the case in Potsdam. Truman and Stalin kind of quarreled. They didn't get along. And the other thing, July 21st, 4 days before Potsdam, Truman knew that the U.S. had successfully tested an atomic bomb, so he doesn't really need Stalin's help with Japan anymore, which we know was an option. So the Allies really aren't so sympathetic at Stalin's demands for German reparations or anything like that. And here they can't reach an agreement, so they decide that they're going to divide Germany into 4 zones of occupation, meaning each country is going to have a chunk of Germany that they'll help govern. And so you can see Russia, America, Great Britain, and France. And then they also are going to talk about, well, the U.S. is still in war, so how is that going to end? But again, remember, Truman already knows we're going to use the atomic bomb.